Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Homesteading Off the Grid and another morning ramble. We're doing another pre-dawn morning ramble here today. It's just a couple of minutes after 6 in the first part of September, and I decided that this morning I would arrange my chair in such a way that you got to see this beautiful skyline while I talk up the sun this morning. I can still see it through my phone. Isn't it absolutely beautiful? Makes it worth coming up here before the sun's up so I can watch that sun come up. I'm going to talk to you today about this whole concept of off-grid living, because different terminology means different things to different people. And the way I view the entire idea of off-grid living is more of a mental state, and that's a good thing. And bear with me, because whether you're watching this video from an apartment inside the center of a city, and you're saying to yourself at first, oh, look at that beautiful view out in the country. I wish I had that. I wish I could do that, but I'm in the city. Now bear with me, because you can go as off-grid in your mind as I have mine, and you're going to be like, okay. And if you're in Texas, you know, I'm in Virginia. Those of you who subscribe to the channel know that. But if you're in Texas and you live on a 5,000 acre ranch and you're watching this and you're saying, wow, you're out there on this little 6-acre farm up there in the north in Virginia, because I hear a fox over there in the woods. I have the luxury of knowing what the fox says because I live out here in the wild with them. But you know, people in the South considers every state that's above them in the North not part of the South. That's just kind of a funny thing they do in the South. But if you're in Texas saying 6 acres, why, we call that a lot. That ain't off-grid. Well, bear with me. I hope you can hear that fox. There I go, getting all off tangent again. This time it's not my fault, folks. It's this fox's fault over here in the woods beside me telling me what he says. So anyway, if you look up off-grid living, Wikipedia or whatever dictionary, it's going to talk about not being dependent or reliant upon the energy grid as far as electricity goes, your water, all these things. Well, we're not to the point to having solar panels yet, but we are on well water. But I'll admit that well has an electric pump on it, and I can tell you how to drink the water, but I can't tell you anything about how that pump works. So I guess I'm not quite there yet in that regard. A lot of folks think of off-grid living as being completely self-reliant as far as doing everything that needs to be done around your place yourself. Well, if you've been following, or if you go back and look at some of our older videos, you know that I'm pretty good. Well, Roger, I'm already awake. Just shut up, okay? I'll come let you out here in a minute when I'm done. I got to talk up the sun. All right, I can build animal pens like the one Roger the Rooster's in down there. Now, he's always got to have the last word. Admittedly, they're not very good, but they work. You know, this talk today kind of has been inspired by a goat pen I was building that turns out is going to end up being a chicken pen, because that's how not very good of a goat pen it was ending up being. So that's okay. We're on our way to get 8 new hens this morning, buying them from somebody who actually did reply back to us on Craigslist, and then who did follow up to our follow-up, and we've set an appointment for this morning. And it's great. We only had to contact about 10 people this time on Craigslist to get what we wanted. So remember, guys, if you're buying on Craigslist and you want something, you better send messages out to 5 people who are selling it if you want one of them to get back to you. It's what we finally did. So anyway, to me, and now this is where, if you're in that city or in that city apartment, be that city Chicago or Charlottesville or Virginia Beach or Seattle, you can go off-grid too. To me, off-grid living is about living a life that makes us happy, doing what we want to do, pursuing our passions. And it's not this 9 to 5, 60-hour week. It used to be 40 hours a week. If you talk to your parents, well, a lot of you are millennials, and I'm old enough to be your parent. So let me say, if you're in your 30s or older, if you talk to your parents, they can tell you about how once upon a time in America, and it's still the same around most of the world, people were expected to work 40 hours a week. They had their weekends off to spend time with their families or do what they enjoyed. Well, as we all know now, at least here in the U.S., it's not that way anymore. It's like that a lot of places around the world, but the U.S. just isn't one of them. So what does it mean? I mean, to pursue our passions, to do what we enjoy. Well, we've got to understand first and foremost, there's a difference between pursuing our passions and pursuing wealth or chasing money. A lot of times folks will get in that trap of getting, they go to college like I did, and I graduated from college. I'm not knocking on education here. It's like Mark Twain said, though, and I agree with Mark Twain. I just never let my education get in the way of my learning, because the most valuable lessons I ever learned were in the classroom of life, not in the classroom up there at the university. But we've got to do what makes us happy, and if we do, the benefit is we'll never have a job a day in our life, because it'll never feel like work. I'm going to share a story with you. I meant to share this story with you in an earlier ramble, but I got off track, and that was my fault that time. It wasn't because of the fox on my right or the rooster on my left, because I just got off track and never came back to it. But I spent my first 8 years out of college as a stockbroker, 6 years with a major firm that's a partnership, and then the last 2 years as an independent practitioner before leaving that industry entirely. I felt empty. My heart was never in it, but I was doing it because I thought I could make a lot of money doing it. We were having lunch one day, me and a guy who was almost he was a partner in the firm. He was a limited partner, and some other newer brokers, and we were talking, and somebody asked him, because other major firms were constantly trying to buy this partnership because it is so big and successful, and somebody asked this guy, what would he make if the partnership were to sell out? And he told us, and it was over $1 million. It was a lot of money. And this guy was in his early 40s. And I said, man, if I was a partner, I'd sell out. And he looked at me and he said, that's why, Kevin, you'll never be a partner. And I took offense to this. And I was offended by that statement for many years. And that's only because it took me many years to figure out what this guy was talking about and what he was really saying. It had nothing to do with me. I took it as him saying, oh, you're not willing to do the work, you're not smart enough, you're just not good enough to be a partner in the firm. But the guy had a point. When we pursue something for the idea of that is the pinnacle, and for material reasons, because my focus was that $1 million plus paycheck or check I would get if we sold out, that's the wrong reasons, and you're never going to catch it. It's like a bar of soap in the shower. The harder you grip it, the more it just kind of slides out of your hands. I don't know if that's the best analogy for this, but it took me 10 years to realize that guy was right. Now, and that's because when I finally started pursuing my passion, I reached, levels of success as far as quantified by society that were astronomical. And I saw that guy was right, because I wasn't chasing the success, I was pursuing the passion. So now, how do we do this, so you're asking? How are we able to just, I think I hear something over there. I'm probably hearing a lot of things over here. But the biggest thing that keeps most of us from living this kind of lifestyle where we're truly doing what truly makes us happy is that we have been so programmed our entire lives, and the older we get before we start doing this, the harder it is to do it. The number one reason why, in my mind, and this is why it took me so long to finally live the way I wanted to live, not the way others wanted me to live, is because we feel as if we owe an explanation to others, be it parents, be it partners. Mostly it's society itself. We have neighbors that we see going out doing the 9-to-5 thing every day, or the 9-to-7 thing, because it's not even 9-to-5 anymore. Then who are we to dare to not do that, be part of that soul trap rat race, and stay here and do what we love? Well, we're us. That's who we are, and we have every right to do it. They have every right to do it too, but they make the choice not to. We owe no one any explanation for the way we live. As long as we're not harming others, we're doing what we enjoy, we do what we love, it's none of their business, and no explanation is necessary. You know, I've had people, and I appreciate each and everybody who is here and who is a loyal subscriber, but I'll have people come on, and this is way more than one person, so don't think I'm picking on you if you've said this, but they'll say, I totally get you. I love the way you think. I agree with everything you say. I love the way you're living, but I do hope you realize that, and then fill in the blank with the name of whatever deity this person subscribes to, because it's often different, is guiding your path and blah, 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 blah. Okay, no, you don't get me, okay? And I'm not saying that I disagree with your choice of deity. I'm not saying that you're wrong or you're right. What I'm saying is, no, all those expectations that have been placed on me by others, they're gone. People will likewise comment, I like what you say, you motivate me, you inspire me. I went to Amazon to buy your books, but when I saw what you wrote about, or what the things you write about, I was kind of shocked. Now, if you would write a book about this, I would buy it. No, you don't get me, at least as much as you think you do. I write what I want to write, period. No explanation or justification is needed. And that's part of this off-grid, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful or unappreciative. I'm flattered that you enjoy hearing what I say enough to where you would go check out my books on Amazon. If you don't want to read them, that's fine too, because I don't write them for anybody else but me. So we don't owe anybody any explanations whatsoever. Now, the biggest part, and this is number 3, my point number 3, is that to get to this lifestyle, my way of seeing off-grid, what does it mean, freeing our minds, getting out of that soul trap, is that we've got to overcome our fear. And that fear is different things to different people. Here in the United States, so much of it is, you know, you'll hear people talk about how much they hate their job, they're miserable, but they've been there for so many years, so they feel as if they're invested, they can't leave. You know, one of the stories I shared from one of our commenters here about a month ago broke my heart. Her husband had been at, you know, his job for 30-ish years, or almost 30 years. They had a couple children, they raised their children. The man never had the time to spend with the children that he wanted, or with his wife that he wanted. He was 2 years away from being able to retire with the pension and all these benefits, and he was sticking it out even though his kids were now grown and gone. And with 2 years to go, he died of cancer. That was tragic. It's tragic that he died of cancer. It's tragic that this wonderful woman that left this comment lost her partner. What is also tragic is all the years that, you know, it was just a sad story. So, you know, because we've got to overcome the fears. Is it the fear of, well, you've got this wonderful health insurance at your job that you hate that makes you miserable, and so you're not going to leave because you might get that brain-eating amoeba that can only be treated if you have a particular rider on your health insurance policy that's only issued by this company that you can only get if you work for this corporation? Is that the fear that's keeping you there? You've got to overcome that fear, or you'll never be able to get off-grid in your mind, and you'll never have this. And again, if you're in the city, in an apartment in Chicago or New York, you can get off-grid if that's your fear. Isn't that sunrise just absolutely beautiful? Look at me, getting all off topic again because of the sun. It's just so beautiful. Number 4, this is all about deprogramming. You have got to unlearn everything you've been taught. I mean, at least most things. You know, I often talk about people who inspired me. I talk about, you know, I lived in the Philippines for many years, and I met people over there who inspired me. 2 quick stories, I promise, they're going to be quick. You know, I would get frustrated because I went there and I had this American mindset, work, 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 work. And I looked around and I'd see the people not working as much as we did. But what frustrated me so much about it is that they seemed to be so much happier than we are. And it's because they were. They had so little. They had nothing compared to us. But they had smiles on their faces bigger than I've seen here. You know, my wife and I went out to my son's school yesterday to do a parent-teacher conference thing. We liked his teacher. We like his teacher. We like most of the folks that we've met there at that school. I don't think I saw one smile while we were at that school, at least on the face of anybody who was not a child. And I noticed these things, and I cracked a little wisecrack there a couple times while we were talking with some of the folks there, trying to get a smile out of them, and it didn't work. They looked at me like I was immature, or they were trying to figure out whether or not I was being serious or not. And I thought, man, this is just sad. This breaks my heart. So anyway, I'm in the Philippines, and I'm talking to this older man. He's in his 70s, and I saw a toad hopping over there. He's telling me about his 2 children. This guy was a retired, he did work when he was in his working years, the age of his working years. He was a police officer, and he was actually chief of police in the closest city to this province where he retired to, where I was living, which was 2 hours away from this city. And it was down on the island of Mindanao. And he was telling me, and he spoke very good English. He was a well-educated man. And I would walk up the beach. I'd see him out. He lived on a little hut by the beach. I would go spend time with him, talking with him, and I could share my frustrations with him, and he wouldn't get offended by it because he had a worldly view. And he helped me understand a lot about the culture. And this is when I was there in my early years, my first year of what would go on to be between 5 and 6 years. And he was trying to help me understand the differences of the culture. And he told me that when Spain occupied the Philippines for over 400 years, the Spanish had the same frustrations I did, because they couldn't understand why they couldn't get these indentured servants to work so much for their empire and harvest their resources so they could take them, over to Europe and around the world and sell them. And the guy told me, he said, look, he says, we could have the life you guys have in America if we wanted it, but we don't want the stress that you guys have to get it. He said, look around us. He says, we can eat everything that grows here. He was drinking juice from a coconut that came from one of his trees at the time. He said, I have fruits and vegetables galore that grow wild all season. We have our gardens. He says, when I want meat, I can take my net and go down here to the beach. And when the tide comes in, I can stand behind it, put down my net, and as it goes out, in the first try, I'll catch more fish than my family can eat. And he told me about his children and how he paid for them to get in a college education, and they both became nurses. He had a son and he had a daughter. He said his son was a nurse in the United States somewhere, and his daughter got a nursing degree, but she never became a nurse. And I said, well, you must be very proud of your children. And he said, I am. I'm proud of my children. He said, I worry about my son. I worry about his happiness. I'm like, what are you talking about? Your son achieved the dream of, so many people over here. He got a college degree. He moved to the U.S. He's a nurse. He said, I know. And he said, it's why I worry about him. He said, my son works 60 hours plus a week. He calls me every week. He's always wanting to send money I don't need. I never let him send the money. But I fear my son is missing life. It's passing him by, and he's just not happy because all he does is work, work, work. And I said, well, what about your daughter? How'd she turn out? You said she didn't go into nursing. He said, I'm as proud of my daughter as I am my son. He said, but I'm really happier for my daughter because I know she's doing what makes her happy, and she doesn't have the stress my son has. And I'm like, well, where is she? I mean, what's she doing? And he points over and he says, that's her over in the garden. And I look over, and here's this beautiful Filipino woman about the same age as me, gardening, smiling. She has a nursing degree, but she's not a nurse, and she never left the Philippines. She's over there working in her father's garden. So I think you get my point. And there was also another time I was in a park getting my feet massaged, reflexology they call it, where they get all the pressure points on your feet, and it reduces stress and all this stuff. And I was watching these young people, these young Filipinas in their early 20s, just dancing because they love to dance, they love to sing, and it's a big part of the culture. And I said to this old woman sitting beside me, I said, if your people would work more, they wouldn't be so poor. And she said, yes, this is true. And she said, if your people would dance more, they wouldn't be so unhappy. She had a point. She hit me right between the eyes with the facts and with the truth. Isn't that absolutely beautiful? I mean, I know I always give you a parting shot here at the end of the rambles, but it's so beautiful watching the sun come up. I had to give you a shot of it while it's coming up. So now, point number 5, to going off-grid in your mind. And you can do this if you're in the city, if you're in an apartment in Dallas, Texas. You can do it. And if you're out on a ranch in Houston, Texas, you still may not have done this. I would encourage you to do so. I've done it, and this is why I can say I truly believe and feel I am off-grid, even though I have electricity and my well water is run with an electric pump. And even though I can't fix everything around here that needs to be fixed, I got off tangent there. I was saying, yeah, I build the pens for my animals. They're not the best in the world, and I can fix a lot of things. But as you know, if you've been following the channel recently, I called in an expert plumber because there was something above my pay grade, and I couldn't fix it, and I didn't want to learn to do it because, number 5, I'm off grid because my time, I pursue my passion with my writing, with my office here at home, and my passion, which is more passion than that, that's about buying the food and paying the bills, okay? But my true passion is my family, my wife, my son, and living, laughing, and loving. You know, if you guys saw the video the other day of us, me and my wife dearly, taking a hike through the woods, laughing, acting like goofballs, that is my truest passion. And when my son's with us, that is the epitome. That's the pinnacle. It's not about a partnership in a private firm. It's about being with my wife and my son together, loving, living, laughing. So yesterday, I was out here working. I was converting what started out as a goat house to a hen house. And dearly, my beautiful bride comes out. She goes over and she lays down in the hammock, which is beside my work area. And she starts swinging in the hammock. So I stop and I look at her. And we have 5 large walnut trees surrounding that part of our property. You can see one right there. They shade our house from the sun and give us more walnuts than we can eat. So we share them, of course, with the squirrels. The leaves on these trees are already turning yellow. They're falling all around her while she's in this hammock. And I dropped my hammer and I said, you know what? This hen house, it started out as a goat house. It may end up being something else before I'm done. Can wait. Because I'm going to go sit in a chair beside my beautiful bride and live, laugh, and love for the rest of this afternoon. And we did. We were there for an hour, living, laughing, and loving. We went to our son's school for that parent-teacher conference thing. I knew that if I would have come home when that was over, I would have had time to get this hen house finished by dark, if it did end up being a hen house and not something else. But I didn't do that. We went into town. We went to Observatory Hill, there at the University of Virginia's campus, because they've got a beautiful set of trails up there, and we haven't hiked in those trails for quite a while. So that's what we did. We went hiking. We hiked a 30-minute loop in these trails, and we lived and we laughed and we loved. After that, we were coming home because I thought to myself, you know, we've got enough time now to where I can get home. I might get part of that hen house, which may or may not end up being a hen house because it started out as a goat house, finished before dark. Well, we drove past the field where the UVA band practices, and we saw that they were practicing. So we went out and we parked on the hill above them, fed the parking meter, which my wife and son enjoyed because they'd never used a parking meter. Again, they were both my son was born in the Philippines. My wife spent the first 28 of her 30 years there, and it was so enjoyable watching them feed coins into a parking meter because they'd never done it before, and they were watching the time go up, and they were laughing, and we were living and we were loving. We went down and watched the University of Virginia Cavalier Marching Band practice for 30 minutes because that's how much change we had to buy us. We watched the drum line, we walked around and watched the saxophones, then we went over to the trumpets and the mellophones and then the tubas and back to the drum line. Then we came home. We got home just before dark and there wasn't enough time yet to finish that hen house, which may or may not end up being a hen house. Oh well, I'll get back to it today, maybe. But at any rate, I don't want to keep you. You've got your own living, loving, and laughing to do, and I've got to go wake up my beautiful bride and our darling son and get him ready for school, and she and I have got to go pick up those chickens. Hope you got something out of this, and we'll see you for more next time here at Homesteading Off the Grid.